Hello and welcome to Diaspora Network Television, DNT. We are in one of those virtual interviews. I wish I had these ladies in the studio, but we have to do it virtual these days. Everybody's running helter skelter everywhere. I'm delighted to be joined by two amazing young women who may not be a household name back in Ghana, but if you have any idea what they are doing for Mother Ghana on the other side of the Atlantic, you would soon appreciate them. So let me introduce Adjoa Kyerematen. Which one of you is
Hi.
Adjoa? Hello.
Hello.
Adjoa is President and CEO of Ghana Diaspora Public Affairs Collective, and then have Kim Afoakwah.
Yes.
Hello, Head
Hi.
of Government Affairs. These two are the power ladies in Washington, D.C. And so we're going to speak to them to find out what they're up to. It is very, very simple. And me, I'm here in my little corner in Sugar Land, Texas. Ladies, welcome.
Thank you. We're here in Martha's Vineyard,
Oh, okay. Actually, Martha's Vineyard. All right. That's which state is that? Is that New York or Rhode Island?
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts. Okay, very good. Very good. All right. Self-introduction. I've told them your name, but who are you? Start with you, Madame Kyerematen.
Okay. Hi. So Adjoa Kyerematen, President and CEO of what many people say now Ghana Diaspora PAC, GHPAC. We have so many monikers because I guess many people don't want to just say Ghana Diaspora Public Affairs Collective. It's just a simple name, but
Okay.
but yes, so normally we are in Washington, D.C. That is where I work and live with my husband and child, and have been involved in politics and policy for almost 20 years now. Actually, there's a couple of ways in which people get into this kind of career, but my track was through PR. I started off as a reporter, then ended up working as a director of communications for a congresswoman. And when I was on the Hill, Capitol Hill, that's when I really fell in love with policy making and government affairs. When I left Capitol Hill, I went to what we call K Street, which is another moniker for lobbying, working primarily on healthcare issues. And then along the way, obviously, as a proud Ghanaian American, start to stick my nose into any affairs related to Africa and Ghana, and ultimately gathered a few others that had that same passion, and we started Ghana Diaspora PAC.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Now, next, Madame Afoakwah, tell us about yourself.
Well, thank you again so much for having us today. I grew up in Silver Spring, Maryland. I currently reside in Bowie, Maryland with my husband and three young children. And similar to Adjoa's, from a young age, I've always had an interest in politics and policy. And so I studied at Howard University. I was a political science major. And then from there, I went on to law school at the University of Baltimore, and I had several internships during that time. I spent a semester at the Department of Justice on Capitol Hill, interning for my home state senator, Benjamin Cardin, while he served on the Judiciary Committee. And then I had an exciting internship experience at the White House, serving as an intern for First Lady Michelle Obama. And that really just shaped my interest in public policy and the intersection with government and how all of that impacts legislative affairs. But my whole life, my parents have been involved in the Asante Kotoko Association. So we used to go to all of the events. They would take us to all of the meetings. And so even though I was born in the US, I've always had that passion for Ghana because what was instilled in me. And so actually my late father, Michael Kojo Dumfor, and my father-in-law, Francis Okwesi Asumenin Afoakwah, he was actually the former president of Asante Kotoko before he passed. And so that has just carried with me all my life. And I was introduced to Adjoa by a mutual friend, and she shared with me her vision for GHPAC. And ever since there, we've worked together to fulfill the mission of the organization.
Very good. So you were born in United States. Adjoa, where were you born?
I was also, it's so funny. I tend to fool people sometimes, but I was also born in the United States. And just as Kim has shared, from an early on, had a love and dedication to Ghana, what was happening at home. I credit that to my parents. But when I was young, I went to live in Ghana for a few years as a young child and came back. And then every summer I would go to Ghana with my family. And then when I was really young, I also started the Ghana Friends Club in middle
Both,
school
both,
and
both of
high.
you ladies have what they call baby face with your cheeks and everything. So in
Yeah.
Ghana, I guess we'll call you Dada Bas, right? But
Oh, yes. I learned that term pretty early, actually. So
okay,
I've just decided to embrace it.
you got it. You got it. All right. When you hear about Ghana or GHPAC in Washington, when you hear PAC, PAC, it usually stands for Political Action Committee. But
Correct.
yours, I just noticed that it means Public Affairs Collective. What does it do? What's the relevance of it?
So PAC in this case actually has a double meaning because Ghana Diaspora Public Affairs Collective
Mhm,
also has a political arm
mhm.
called the Ghana Diaspora Political Action Committee.
Okay.
And then we have our charitable arm, the Forward Ever Collective Foundation.
Okay.
So here in the United States, as you can imagine, it's very important to have your legal designations intact and in order to be able to effectively execute on activities. So the collective
Mhm.
is our 501c4, which means that we can lobby. We can lobby and advocate on policy issues impacting Ghanaians living in the United States and US Ghana issues.
Oh.
We also do policy work, meaning we research,
Mhm.
we educate on our various stakeholders on these issues, and then we write letters or we impact government officials on these issues. For an
Okay.
example,
Mhm.
we wrote a comment letter to the Department of Homeland Security when under the Trump administration, when they were considering a pretty harmful proposal to put Ghana on the terrorist country list
Oh, wow.
because of overstayed international student visas. Can you imagine?
Because of what?
Overstayed visas with international students. So they
So
wanted to
if
target.
you're if you're an international student from Ghana and you overstayed in America, Trump administration was going to dub you a terrorist.
Not the student, the country. So meaning
Well, yes. Oh,
yeah,
yes. They were going to dub the country Ghana a terrorist country because her citizens have overstayed their visa in America.
yes, they were going to put Ghana on a watch list. And so we wrote a very long letter. We had to do research. So what people don't understand is that lobbying is not just shaking hands and all that. It is also making the argument.
Okay.
So we presented research that showed there was no basis for the policy proposal.
Hmm.
Um, that what these international students were doing, that this is what they had accomplished. This was the important role that Ghana plays as a U.S. strategic ally, and so that there was no basis for the proposal.
And in the end, did we win that battle?
yes, the proposal did not go forward.
Very good. So let me get with you, Madam Afoakwah. Madam, okay. What are some of your policy accomplishments besides the one that was just announced, which I believe is huge? A lot of people in Ghana do not know this. But what else have you guys done since the inception of your organization?
I think one of the most valuable things that we've done is making sure that members of Congress, policymakers, advocates are aware of GHPAC and that we are a resource here in this country and we have a presence with many of our members across the globe. So we want to make sure that we're a resource. When there's questions, sometimes policymakers will come up with ideas without checking in with the right people to make sure, does this make sense? Are we messaging it well? And that's something that I think is that's really important for any organization, a new one like ours, fairly new, that's establishing ourselves, especially in the Washington, D.C. Hub of politics and policy. So I think that's huge, and bringing people along to support the work that we're doing. We have commented on legislation. During the pandemic, we really worked towards making sure that members of the community are aware of the benefits that they're entitled to. So you think about unemployment insurance and how during the pandemic, typically, if you're an independent contractor, you wouldn't be entitled to unemployment insurance, right? But you think about the cab drivers, the gig economy, a lot of them didn't know, but we worked towards ensuring those communities really understood, like, hey, you can get a piece of this pie and you're entitled to it. And so that helped a lot of people during a very, very challenging time. During the census count, we were involved with that. We went to various churches to make sure that our people, hey, you're counted and you understand why being counted as part of the census is critical. It is the vehicle that helps determine how much funding, aid, and resources go back to your community. Another area, and it's along the lines of our PAC, is supporting Ghanaian Americans, Ghanaians who are running for elected office in the state, local, state, and federal level, knowing that they have someone that's here to support them, to uplift their names and support their candidacies, because as we know, being a part of the election process is very critical. Your vote is important. You want your voice to be heard, and it's good to have someone who's representing your interests at the table. So I would say those are the three areas where we have really accomplished a lot in the short time since we've been launched and been an official organization.
As a self-confessed political animal, a policy analyst, I can't overstate what you guys are doing, but the begging question is, shouldn't aren't these the stuff that our embassies are supposed to be doing? And I'll add to that question, how closely do they reach out to you?
We enjoy a very close relationship with the Ghana Embassy in Washington, D.C., actually, and the new Ambassador Mama, has been wonderful in her support and her staff. However, the embassy is charged to represent the Republic of Ghana and government. We at GHPAC are charged to represent Ghanaians no matter where we live. And that is the starkest difference. And that is what we tell policymakers as well, that we are here to advocate on issues impacting Ghanaians no matter where we live, even if that means that the government of Ghana is part of the challenge that we have to address, or the government of the United States is part of the challenge that we have to address. And so it's very important for people to participate in the civic process. And what is somewhat of a unfamiliar term of lobbying in the Ghanaian community, it can be familiar in the sense of when we think of pressure groups back at home, when we think of when we get on a radio to give light to issues, or when we strike because of issues. This way, one of our taglines is to advocate collectively, which means to bring all the important stakeholders together, including Ghanaian community leaders, and getting them engaged in this process in a way that protects them. Because many of our Ghanaian community leaders are heads of 501c3s or are church leaders and cannot be explicitly involved in the political process. GHPAC provides the ability for Ghanaian community leaders to be heard in a way that doesn't harm their status.
You know what? Go ahead. Go finish up.
It also allows for us to give voice to the undocumented. One of the things that we do work on is stopping deportations. And one thing that people don't know, Ghanaians don't know, is that your congressional representative can stop your deportation, and it is part of their duty to hear out your case. We seem to think that because some of us are undocumented, that means we don't have rights and a say here in the United States, and that's not true. You're here, you're paying taxes, you're working, and so we also work on those issues, and we hope to very soon launch our pro bono immigration legal program, who we hope to work with multiple partners on that.
Okay.
One other thing I'd just like to quickly add is just to underscore what Adjoa mentioned is the importance of stakeholder engagement. I mean, it's critical. Oftentimes when our lawmakers are making decisions, they take into consideration the business community and then the stakeholders, right? That's who they go to get information, to check the pulse of the community. And we want to make sure that our voices are heard on issues, especially those that impact us. We don't want things as Ghanaians to just happen to us. No, we want to be influential and say, this is what's important to our community. These are our needs. And then just as a side, you think about some of the communities that have community recreation centers. They're able to get funding for special initiatives and projects where they're densely populated in certain communities. And it's like, well, our numbers are equal in this part of the country. Why don't we have a community center? Or why didn't we have, healthcare centers coming to administer vaccination shots for our people at our church and things like that? But if we're not a part of the table, they won't just think about us, right?
Exactly.
So GHPAC is also using our power and our voice to ensure that we, as tax-paying citizens, we as people in this country that contribute to all sectors from business to healthcare, that our people are getting a slice of the pie. So not just, oh, you're a lawyer, you're a doctor, you're comfortable in your corner, but all the working people deserve equal opportunity and access to the benefits that this country offers. And that's also a huge part of what drives the engagement from the young people in our organization, because they also see like, wow, this community of people gets X, Y, and Z, and I might be good and I might be educated, but what about my family members that are coming here, or people that may not be as highly educated? Should they suffer because they're not aware? No, we have to make sure that our people are aware of everything.
And you guys are the mouthpiece of that. Okay.
Absolutely.
What's cool, fresh and trendy with a new look? Makes you feel real good, that refreshing vibe. Satisfies you right just the way you like. Do you know? Do you know? Do you know? Ain't gotta do it alone. Specialized makes you glow. Anytime, anywhere. Specialized, feel different. Always think specialized. Special Ice Natural Mineral Water. Feel different. Think special. This advertisement has been vetted and approved by the FDA.
All right. Adjoa, you mentioned something about, in 2017, some good friends of mine, there were four of us, we wrote a paper that sought to decouple diaspora affairs from the diplomatic affairs. And you said something a minute ago that said the embassy represents the government of the country of Ghana. But what you guys are doing are more tilted towards the interests of Ghanaians living in the diaspora. Do you believe that from a structural standpoint in Ghana, for example, when you have a Ministry of Diaspora, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, should we also have a Ministry of Ghanaian diaspora that decouples the interest of the state from the interest of Ghanaians living abroad, especially considering that Ghanaians in the diaspora bring in about $5 billion annually in remittances?
The short answer is yes. In fact, right now we are working on a bill, what we are deeming to call the Diaspora Bill, to present to the Republic of Ghana. What we have seen is we know that the Republic of Ghana right now is working on a homeland return bill that is largely designed to address the interests of diasporans, particularly African Americans, in order to ease their pathways to Ghana. And what we have been having discussions about at two members of the Ghana government is that Ghanaians and the diaspora have specific, unique needs. We also have a different pathway as either children or grandchildren of Ghanaians, not to say about those who just immigrated here. You are a Ghanaian. That is alone an education process that we have to engage in. And I give respect to those who have been doing that work all along in regards to ROPA. So what people don't understand is that we have a different pathway. That means we're not applying for dual citizenship. We have to process our dual citizenship. So that is one thing. Then we know what the research says, that in addition to the 5 billion you mentioned of financial remittances, Ghanaians in the diaspora are more likely to engage in social remittances, particularly those in the second and third generation. And so that means we're coming to Ghana, we're coming home to either do pro bono medical work and medical missions.
Absolutely.
We are sometimes doing pro bono education, right? And teaching in schools. We are engaged in slightly different ways. And so sometimes, I know so everyone knows, we've all experienced those challenges of when we try to go home, even when we're doing charitable work, to either get the licensing, or we're paying out of our nose to do basic things. And so what we've been saying and what we hope to capture with this diaspora bill, of which we want to socialize with all the Ghanaian community leaders here in the United States first, is that we have unique needs. And so there should be a budget and an office that can handle those unique needs. Not to say estate rights. How many of us have family members at home, and when they pass, there's a whole issue with land and assets that is difficult for us living here or abroad. So anyway, to say that, yes, we agree that there needs to be a ministry, and the difference between an office and a ministry is that a ministry has a budget that can be allocated to address those issues. And I'll only wrap up to say that when I say that GHPAC is advocating for Ghanaians no matter where we live, I also mean Ghanaians at home, because we have the dual responsibility, not only for our families and ourselves here or wherever we may live, but our families back at home. And we are all deeply entrenched with needs about development back at home. And so we believe in harnessing particularly private interests
Okay.
Giving vehicles. And so we do policy work at home as well to
Okay.
advance development.
Very good. Now that leads me to the next big thing that you guys are working on, which I am so proud of you ladies. Congressional Ghana Caucus. I mean, you hear Congressional Black Caucus, Congressional. I didn't know there was specific country caucuses. What light can you share on them? Let me see who wants to take this.
I'll have Kim start off.
Okay.
Yeah, the Congressional Ghana Caucus is something, I mean, it's really like my baby. And the baby
Okay.
something that we're working hard to accomplish. But as you mentioned, there's a caucus for everything, single country caucuses, healthcare disease, childhood obesity. There's a caucus for everything. And they're really a vehicle to drive policy collaboration, to bring attention to issues. But all the caucuses aren't made equally. Some are more active than others. Some have just been established and you don't hear from them at all. But the Ghana caucus will be different. One thing that's been very excited as we're working to launch the Congressional Ghana caucus is the level of interest that we've gotten from members of Congress. This is not something where we had to convince people or members of Congress, rather, why the Congressional Ghana caucus is important. It's more so, oh, there isn't one already? Oh, I've traveled to
That was my
You
wow.
would be surprised how many elected officials have traveled to Ghana. They love it. They're passionate about it. But again, this is why GHPAC is so important, because for all of these years, the history of our country, the relationship that we have with the United States, no one said, let's do this. And so we're doing it. And we're so excited that the caucus will be launched in September, ahead of our gala. So it's very exciting, and we plan to have Hill briefings on issues. We're going to bring in speakers. We're going to be active. We're going to put together congressional delegations for members of Congress to go visit and tour the country. And so it's just very, very exciting. Again, the level of interest. You think about in 2019, that Speaker Pelosi led a delegation of members of Congress to Ghana. Do you know how special that is? I mean, you just heard about Speaker Pelosi going to this country and all the news that it got, but she understands the history of Ghana and why it was important for her. Any member can say, oh, they want to put together a CODEL and do that, but to have the Speaker of the United States, the most powerful woman, come to do that just speaks volumes. And so we're just excited that we're able to put this together.
I'll also say it's more than just the history. The historic relationship between US and Ghana that dates beyond 1957. We all know the story. Our former president, Kwame Nkrumah, coming to the United States and being educated here. We also have not heard the story of the fact that we have had Ghanaians who participated in the United States Civil Rights Movement, regular Ghanaians who were college students who fought for voting rights and the like. But that Ghana now has stepped into a world role. We saw that earlier this year with Ghana's vote at the UN Security Council. Is one of the few African votes. We have seen that now as Ghana has been named as the seat and hub of the Secretariat for the Africa Free Trade Agreement, right? And now we're seeing that Ghana continues to be very much appealing to U.S. companies, and right now hosts 100 U.S. companies as their main headquarters in Africa.
You know what?
So,
you know what? And this is coming to you, and you can. When you first told me about this, one of the things that stuck out of me is that rather than you trying to get to the Congress men and women to be a part of this, and I don't know if there's another country who has a caucus that you can compare it to, but in this case, it seemed like the Congress men and women are literally fighting, tripping over each other to be a part of this.
yes. Oh yes. Oh yes. Because it's Congressional Ghana Caucus, but because Ghana is a leader, whoever is chairing the Congressional Ghana Caucus will essentially be the leader on US Africa issues, bar none. And
Okay.
because they'll have the support of one of the most powerful, if I may, African diaspora organizations in the United States, GHPAC, of which, because we have policy professionals at GHPAC and we can back them up with evidence, with research, and with community level support, which is critical now. Just recently, the White House unveiled their new US Africa strategy, and they realized that the only way the United States can compete as a global leader in Africa is to finally tap into the African diaspora that lives in the United States. Because I can say, at least for Ghana anyway, the largest Ghanaian diaspora lives in the United States. So as much as we love our Brits, are in it,
Uh,
eh, we have to get organized.
Adjoa, I beg, don't start this fight on my show. I beg.
I mean, Ghana Diaspora PAC will eventually extend our work in other countries, including the UK and others. But in fact, the UK, Ghanaians in the UK are more organized than Ghanaians in the United States. And so that is why, so kudos to them on that one. But here in the United States, we have a larger geographic area. We're all spread from, we always talk about New York Ghanaians, DMV Ghanaians, but there's a strong Ghanaian community in LA, in Chicago, in Texas,
And
in
don't forget Toronto. Toronto is,
yeah,
you have a Safo and all those places anyway. But
yeah.
this is all fine and dandy. I appreciate you guys. But at the end of the day, they said, bringing, you will understand this, bringing the bacon home. How does GHPAC and the Congressional Ghana Caucus bring home the bacon, Kim? You say it's your baby.
I would say this, I mean, this is how it starts, right? You have to, I mean, it's a multi-step process. And that's why the stakeholder engagement piece that I spoke about earlier is so critical. Yeah, people might often think, oh, to do business with Europe, to do business with China. More recently, the US Chamber of Commerce just published an article that speaks about the importance of doing business in Africa and having that relationship. They're actually going on a like a speaker series event across the country. I think it begins early September in Atlanta to talk to businesses about, hey, you need to pay attention to Africa, but for us, it's pay attention to Ghana, and these are the reasons why. And so it's like, people will think, oh, Africa, Ghana, third world country, right? People who really don't know what the options and opportunities exist there, but it's education, right? And through this caucus, we'll be able to educate business leaders about the possibility of trade, business opportunities in the country. And so the education piece is important, and making sure that we're connecting individuals who want to do work and contribute and be a part of business opportunities in Ghana. So I think that's a huge piece of it. And that's what we're working to accomplish. You think about Africa, Ghana, the youngest population, all the opportunities there from infrastructure, technology. There's so much that can be done. But if people aren't aware, they won't know that it's an option. And you think about social media and how that has really impacted young people and their interest and even traveling to Ghana. I mean, I think about my friends growing up, like, oh, Kim, you're from Ghana. Okay, nice. Now those same friends are like, oh, Kim, can you introduce me to a cousin? Because I'm going to spend my holidays in Ghana and I want to go to this place and this place. So if you think about that interest in the way social media has even helped change the perception of what Africa is, what Ghana is, that young people who may have made jokes about Africa decades ago are the same ones that want to travel there. It's
Mhm.
similarly aligned with
Yeah.
the business community and realizing how much potential there is to work together and economic advancement.
Adjoa,
Yeah.
it looks like Kim. I asked for bacon and she just gave me a coupon to go to the grocery store. Give me the bacon, please.
Oh no. Well, okay. Well, two-pronged, two things
Okay.
additional to add to what Kim said
Mhm.
is that one, we want to make sure that Ghanaians who often spend, as you've mentioned, a lot of money either building or starting businesses or projects in Ghana. If you're living in the United States, you have access to US government resources to fund your programs and projects and businesses. And oftentimes we do not know that. And yet the US government is funding projects in Ghana and we're not at the table. Usually those projects are led by people that don't look like us, don't have
Mhm.
Kwame, Adjoa Kyerematen names. And that is unfortunate. It shouldn't be that you have to put on a kente dance or a fish fry or something like this to raise funds for your project when the US government will fund hundreds and thousands of dollars for hospitals, for clinics. Many of us are involved with, all kinds of projects in Ghana. So number one is going around to the Ghanaian community in the United States and doing master classes of which we are sharing with them what are the resources that they can tap into at the federal level, as well as state and local as well. And which is why in September, we are embarking on our Sister City Trade Series event as well to give those opportunities and business to business matching and linkages in various industries where of interest between US and Ghana. That is one. The other is, as Kim mentioned, in regards to appealing to companies, US companies that have an interest in Ghana, is to make sure that whatever projects they are embarking on actually create jobs for Ghanaians at home,
Okay.
actually serve the interests of Ghanaians at home. It is important for us that we are a bit of a watchdog in that way, as well as maybe provide them the intelligence on the ground, the market research on the ground of where to invest. So when we talk about bringing companies to Ghana to do tours, often of potential projects that they can invest in, it is for that design and goal that it actually helps and advances development in those areas as well.
Okay.
What's cool, fresh and trendy with a new look? Makes you feel real good, that refreshing vibe. Satisfies you right just the way you like. Do you know? Do you know? Do you know? Ain't gotta do it alone. Specialized makes you flow. Anytime, anywhere. Specialized feel different. Always think specialized. Special ice, natural mineral water. Feel different. Think special. This advertisement has been vetted and approved by the FDA.
Well, Kim, let me get back to you about the way forward. And before I do that, I just want you guys to clear up something. Typically, when we Africans mostly are in America and we want to do anything like you guys dealing directly with Capitol Hill and Washington and everything, we tend to gravitate towards the Democratic Party. But we also know the reality is that in this country, the bus sometimes turns left a little bit and then turns right and then turns left because that's the only way you go forward. At some point, you turn left, at some point, you turn right. And so, is what you're doing going to be possible if you align with one particular political party?
Oh, I mean, You're absolutely right. Business, stakeholder engagement, you can't be partisan. You have to be able to work with members on both sides of the aisle if you really want to get things accomplished. And so the Congressional Ghana Caucus will be bipartisan. You will have elected officials that are Democrats and Republicans because you want to work with people who understand the importance of Africa, the opportunity, why the US-Ghana relationship is very important. So, I mean, simply to answer, yes, it's not this is a Democrat-focused organization. No, you have to be able to be successful as a lobbyist, period. You have to be able to navigate and work with both.
And she's
Okay.
talking about the lobbying side, but remember, we also have our PAC. So that means that we do support candidates on both sides of the aisle as well, if they effectively demonstrate that either they're going to put forth policies that protect the interests of Ghanaians living in the United States, or if they themselves, being Ghanaian, running for elective office, whether they're Republican or Democrat, have shown that they are going to put forth policies that we as a community care about. We don't just endorse any Ghanaian that's running for elected office. We really do ask them to interview with us. Sometimes, depending on the area, if it's an area that has a lot of Ghanaians, we will ask them to present themselves to the Ghanaian community, in which they will then participate in the poll to advise us, GHPAC, on whether or not we should endorse that candidate as well.
In our fourth republic, President Clinton went to Ghana when President Rawlings was the president there. And then President Bush went to Ghana when President Nkrumah was the president there. And then President Obama went to Ghana when Mills and then Mahama. Trump did not go to Africa. Now, but it's hard to argue against some of my friends in Ghana who make the Republican argument that, look, when you look at beginning the Fourth Republic, Clinton, you can't put a finger on what he did that directly benefited us. Yes, he was party to the AGOA legislation. And today's day, I haven't really seen anything concrete out of it. But Bush, on the other hand, with his Millennium Challenge account thing, we saw concrete stuff that came to Ghana and Africa. With Obama, again, when you ask Obama what he did in Africa, they point to Libya. All Obama did was take out Gaddafi in Libya. And so the Republicans are winning that argument in Africa. What can you say to shed light on so that we get a total picture, since you guys are working on United States Congress?
I'll take this one. So the Republicans you've described are unfortunately the Republicans of old to a large extent across the party. And that has nothing to do with Africa itself or Ghana in particular. What Trump introduced is America first, an isolationist policy and point of view, meaning that there was a limited interest in international affairs, period, not just Africa, unless it was directly about military intervention, and even that was limited. So even with Congressional Ghana Caucus, when we are looking at who we can engage on the Republican side, to be frank, there was just very few that we know that are right now directly involved with international affairs, or particularly Africa affairs, in the same way that you described as Bush and others in the past. We hope that that changes in the future. What we do know that is that there are Republicans, whether, again, I mentioned, in other levels of government, that really are focused on competing with China and trade and investment on the continent. And that is where we're finding opportunities to engage as well. Also, when you've described the Democrats and their approach to Africa, it had been primarily about aid. So that is to not diminish what has happened under those presidents. large amounts of aid allocated to Africa and to Ghana. As much as we talk about our progress and things of that nature, we still do receive a lot of aid, even just recently with this COVID pandemic and access to vaccines because of aid from the United States government.
Okay.
What we're seeing now with Democrats is there a bit of an awakening, albeit maybe late, that aid can't be the only way to engage with Africa. And so what we are anticipating is a realignment after AGOA, which is set to expire in 2025, towards more of a bilateral, mutually beneficial arrangement of trade and investment. And we're already seeing glimpses of that with Biden's Build Back Better World initiative, of which our GHPAC is in strong support of, which is all about investing in infrastructure projects in emerging countries like Ghana. We know that they are very much interested in financing projects in Ghana right now, and we are advocating for projects to be considered on the Build Back Better World. Also, Prosper Africa, a huge program at the U.S. government right now, is something that Ghanaians living in the United States should pay close attention to, because even if you have a small and medium enterprise, you can get funding from Prosper Africa to carry forward. So, for example, I believe Rahama Wright, shea butter, is a project of Prosper Africa, for example.
Please write DNT's name down for that.
So yeah, so but you have to play. You can't say that because this is a Democratic president, or I don't like something or another, and then I'm not going to engage in what is available and things of that, or educate myself.
Okay. So what's the way forward, Kim?
The way forward is, I think, is exactly what we're doing, getting this caucus off the ground, which is going to happen in September, continuing to educate members of Congress about the importance of U.S.-Ghana relationships, ensuring that our community is actively engaged. You know, we have an upcoming election. We want our people to be out there and vote in numbers. And that's also impactful when these elected officials who are running in tough races know that they have a constituency that they can count on. They will in turn be more supportive. And so, there's just a number of things that's multi-layered that has to be done to make sure that we are effective. Again, we don't want to be a congressional caucus just in name. We don't want to be an organization just in name. We want to be active. And so there's so many different functions of our organization: community engagement, economic, business, parts of GHPAC, the political side of things. And we're all working in tandem to advance Ghanaians across the diaspora and to make sure that we're able to prosper in this country.
So who are some of the names of congressional members who want to be a part of this Congressional Ghana Caucus?
So for the co-chairs, we have Congressman Dwight Evans out of Pennsylvania, Philly, Sheila Jackson Lee from Texas, and Gwen.
That's my girl. If she wasn't part of it, I would have serious questions for her. Go ahead.
So then you have other members. You think about Congresswoman Terry Sewell. We've had conversations with Chairman Meeks, Gregory Meeks. He chairs the House Foreign Affairs, and he's been very supportive. He actually, during the pandemic, was a keynote speaker during one of our events. And so it's...
Yeah. We must mention Congresswoman Gwen Moore.
Gwen Moore. Oh, wow. That's a number of them. But my question is, since notice that which of you, was it Kim that said you've worked in the Senate before?
I interned for Senator Cardin of Maryland. He's the senior senator when he served on the Senate Judiciary Committee.
And I worked on the House side.
What role do senators get to play, or is it just limited to the House?
So this eventually will be a bicameral caucus, which means it will be House and Senate.
Okay.
It usually, because of the the organization and the role of a House of Representatives, meaning that it's supposed to reflect the interests of the constituents in a more visceral way than the Senate does, right? Most caucuses begin on the House side,
Okay.
and then eventually go to the Senate side. But we're here in Martha's Vineyard because
I was coming to that. I was coming to that.
Yes.
What's happening in Martha's Vineyard? I mean, come on, you guys are having all the fun in a hotel in Martha's Vineyard, and what's going on?
Well, so I said how hard work lobbying is, but this is part of it too. Is coming to nice places like Martha's Vineyard, where this weekend it's events hosted by several actually members of Congress that are here galvanized to commiserate. And we were here just now pitching what will be a very incoming future senator about that when she should sign on now. As she's a member of the House of Representatives, and when she becomes a senator, then she can carry forward and chair the
Are we
caucus.
talking about Valdemis?
No, I wish. I mean, we were going after her too, but we were talking about Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester of Delaware, where there's a lot of Ghanaians in Delaware.
Oh, okay. And she's running for Senate from the Delaware side?
She's not running. There isn't a vacant seat, but she is next in
positioning
line.
herself.
Yeah, she's next in line, and she's someone that's loved, across the board. She's an excellent and active member of Congress, and so we had a great conversation with her today. And I'll also highlight Congressman Joe Neguse from Colorado, our East African brother, who is, when I mentioned it to him, count me in. No, you don't even have to explain. And so
what about Omar from Minnesota?
So, we are approaching her soon about the Ghana caucus. We know that she's already head of several caucuses, including, I believe, the Somalian caucus. Okay. So sometimes we have to be careful about not picking those that are overloaded. But we know she has a growing interest generally in leading the Africa portfolio at the United States Congress. We are in discussions.
Finally, when are y'all gonna run for Congress?
I'm gonna look at her.
I'm gonna look at her. I don't see running for elected office in my future. I love the work that I'm doing, but I will always support candidates. I think.
Well, it looks like you just threw the ball to Adjoa. Adjoa, when is your candidacy announcement?
Having worked for a U.S. Congresswoman and for a number of years, shout out to Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, who never took her shoes off and walked those marble floors all day long. I said, I think I would rather work behind the scenes. Yeah. We enjoy being kingmakers. I would say at GHPAC, there's nothing wrong with that.
All right. What do you need from the authorities in Ghana about your efforts?
Support. It is time, for just in the way that Israel has AIPAC, that Ghana has GHPAC. And that this is going to only elevate the country, elevate Ghanaians, help them in their roles, in what they're trying to achieve to do, make them smarter in what they're trying to do, even perhaps get them some staff that look at politics and policy in a different way. I would say that, we've been exposed to politics and policy in a slightly different way, having been here in the United States. And it's always good to share those ideas. And we've already been doing that with those politicos in Ghana as well. And so we think that's all for the advancement and development of our lovely home, Ghana.
The time is now.
Kim Afoakwah, Adjoa Kyerematen, thank you for speaking with DNT, and more grease to your elbows.
Well, thank you for your platform. You're one of the reasons that GHPAC exists, and that we really are about elevating Ghanaians in the diaspora, and that, we are here. We're already sort of at the table. Now we must organize and and work collectively. And Mr. Nkrumah, the Diaspora Network television is one of those examples. And so we really appreciate all the work that you do to spread light and awareness on what diasporans are doing and all the issues impacting Ghanaians at home as well.
Thank you so much.